As South Africa prepares for economic growth competitive with that of the global market, analysts and policymakers have placed great emphasis on the role of manufacturing in realizing that goal. The Manufacturing Indaba 2018 will tackle discussions regarding various government grants, tax incentives and financing opportunities available to manufacturing-specific enterprises. And Tumelo Fufa, who's a director at Kova Advisory, joins us on the line with more ahead of the Indaba, which takes place in June. Thanks so much, Tumelo, for joining us this evening. So right at the top, what role do incentives play in the manufacturing arena?
Good evening, Felicia, and good evening to the listeners. Well, incentives are important in manufacturing, I guess, for supporting investment. And governments normally use incentives when they would like to stimulate investment in a particular sector or subsector of manufacturing or any sector for that matter. So the idea is that by providing either a tax benefit or a grant, investors would fund projects that they would not have otherwise undertaken, much more profitable, and they would be encouraged to undertake those projects. In certain instances, it may be that a project is still profitable, but the environment is not that conducive, and so government can try and encourage and broaden it as such. For incentives, yeah.
Can try, Tumelo, and that is the key, because one wonders if, these incentives have the same kind of impact in an environment that's still shrouded in uncertainty, as policy rhetoric still needs to translate into actual policy and economic growth, which makes entrepreneurs certainly more nervous and risk averse. So, does it?
No, certainly, on their own, if a government is not committed to providing that type of certainty or providing an overall conducive environment, you can't get investors interested no matter how much incentives you offer. But if you have a situation like we have in South Africa at the moment, where, investors are beginning to feel like government is changing for the better, it's becoming more welcoming of investment, there's much more rationality and certainty returning to policy, one can then use maybe incentives to get investment going much more faster than it otherwise would.
Mm-hmm. So let's drill down into some of the detail here and what, what's being put on the table to pull sentiment in the opposite direction. What incentives are we actually looking at here?
Actually, the South African government has got quite a lot of quite interesting incentives. The incentives that are available to manufacturers in the form of tax breaks. Some sections in the Income Tax Act provide additional tax benefits to manufacturers. There are incentives that are available in the special economic zones, such as maybe a lower corporate tax rate. There are incentives that are available to companies in different sectors. I'm sure a lot of us would know the incentives that are available in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
And then there are also incentives that the DTI has made available to companies that are in the agro-processing sector.
Tumelo, it seems very broad-based. How targeted is the DTI's approach with this? Is it fair game across the board, or do some sectors have, or some, components within the sector have, are they treated as priority areas?
I think from being an outsider, my sense is that you've got a combination of both. in the sense that you do have incentives that are quite particularly targeted towards certain sectors, such as the auto industry. Those incentives are quite big in scope, and they're only available to investors in the automotive sector. There's a big program that the DTI currently has, only focusing on the agro-processing sector. But some of the tax incentives, such as the ones in the special economic zones, and some of the DTI incentives are available across the board. So one tends to find that there's a mixture of the two.
How much of a focus, Tumelo, is placed on sustainability of these businesses beyond the incentives? I mean, is there, a very specific weaning off process that government focuses on simultaneously?
Yeah. Fortunately, I guess some of the older people might be aware that, the previous regime used incentives quite a lot, especially in so-called border towns, and once those incentives were taken, all the manufacturing that was happening in those areas, disappeared. So the issue of sustainability is quite important. So fortunately, most of the incentives that are available in government now don't tend to be of an operational nature. That is, they are not ongoing incentives. They tend to be event-focused. So they may be around investment, buying a new piece of machinery, making a project that is borderline profitable, very profitable, that are not intended for companies to be dependent on them. They tend to be focused on events in a company's life rather than being ongoing, in the operations of a company. So as such, there is companies don't tend to develop a dependency on this incentive.
Well, certainly success of going down this route will have to be monitored. Tumelo, thanks so much for having joined us on the line this evening. That was Tumelo Chipfupa, who's director at Cova Advisory.